Palm Sunday is kind of a fun day, here at Central Christian, when the kids go around and they wave the ponds. And we've had kids jumping up and run around maybe a little more than we used to. But even so, it's fun to see them run around the church and say, "Yay, Jesus!" And that's what we're remembering, this big day when Jesus came into Jerusalem and the crowds cheered. And it's interesting because it wasn't everybody who was cheering, even then. But there was a good, big crowd cheering for him, celebrating, putting the palm branches down, laying their cloaks so that the donkey could walk on it. Remember, it wasn't like people had a closet. You had your cloak most of the time. So to toss what was probably one of your only garments on the ground so it could get stomped on by a pack animal, that's a kind of big deal. It's a moment of triumph. And all of these symbols and all these things that happen they have a meaning. They're all part of what happens when the king comes into the city. And even the donkey is there, because if you think about if you picture a battle, you have the general or the emperor or the king, and he's always going to be on a big war horse, right? Well, one of the traditions was when the king came into his own city to indicate that he wasn't out there to conquer it, because he didn't need to, because it was his city and it was at peace. He'd come in on a donkey, because, a donkey isn't any good at battle. So that was a sign that not just that he was coming, but that he was coming in peace to the place that was rightfully his own. All this stuff has a meaning that they understood, because they would have seen these things go on. So Jesus comes in triumph. Triumph isn't just a word that means a good day. Triumph means he won a great victory. We think about the different kinds of triumphs. Everybody, I hope, I know, we all have those moments of triumph in our life at some point. Maybe it's graduation. That's the one that comes to my mind first of all. But athletics, those people who, when you win the prize or win the championship, or sometimes even just get to the Final Four, that can be a triumph. These moments where you just win and you get to just celebrate and everybody's happy, you get to feel great. I think almost of a wedding as a triumph. The amount of effort and struggle that goes into it, you just have that moment right afterwards. And I see this looking at the couples, they're never happier than when they're walking when they're walking down the aisle together and it's over, It's triumph. But maybe you've had the experience that triumphs aren't always what they're cracked up to be. I was thinking of, and I've had friends, maybe you've known someone like this, teenagers who save up, and they want to buy that really great car. That they work and they squirrel their money away. And we're kind of moving back to the days when you actually have to have money to buy things. So squirrel their money away and they buy that great car. And maybe whether it's whatever year and make and model, you just put that in your head. But then of course sometimes it turns out that great car that the salesman gave you doesn't work quite as well. And you find it costs you 5 times as much time and energy to keep the thing going than didn't get it. And your moment of triumph turns out to be not nearly as great as you thought it was. Sometimes when those things are more significant, you can find out that those moments that look like triumph on the outside turn out to be not quite as great as they look. I think of this when I started working. I got a really good job at one point that I had worked for and got there and found that it just wasn't everything I'd expected it to be. That's actually what got me back in school. Because I'd really reached a point where, as a computer guy, I got about the best job I was ever going to get. I mean, it was a job where they told me, you're going to be set. This is just, this is it. And knowing that I was there, having done all the work to reach this level and wasn't happy, that was the thing that motivated me to change direction that got me here. You can guess what happened to that job too. If any of you have ever gone, oh, don't, we'll take care of everything, don't you worry. You know how those go. And that job is now gone, along with the 4,000 others there. It for me is a moment of realizing that the thing that looks the most attractive is not necessarily, and looking back, you can realize how God's leading you down a path that might look tough at points. And sometimes it looks tough all the way to the end. Sometimes, even at the end of our life, we look back and some things still don't make sense. But hopefully there's enough of those moments where you can start to put the pieces together. That helps you trust that God is taking us somewhere. I think about all this because this moment of triumph that Jesus is having, there's a backstory to it, right? Now we know, because we know that Good Friday is coming, we have a cross in our church, we know where this is going. I always imagine, picking up one of the Gospels and trying to read it like you don't know where the story is going. How hard it is to really enter into where it is. But there's this passage right before Jesus comes in, where he's well on the way to Jerusalem. He takes the 12 guys who are like his assistants, basically. And he says, listen to me carefully. We're on our way up to Jerusalem. When we get there, the Son of Man will be betrayed to the religious leaders and the scholars. They will sentence him to death. Then they will hand him over to the Romans for mockery and torture and crucifixion. And on the third day, he will be raised up alive. Now, there are different versions of how they put it, but the disciples don't understand what that means, which I always think is kind of funny. It's just, he says, okay, it's like saying, okay, I'm going to the store and I'll be back in an hour. And then you come back in an hour and the police cars are in the driveway. Because where were you going? We had no idea where you were. I went to the store, I'm coming back in an hour. It's so obvious. But they couldn't get it. They couldn't get it. It was just too far beyond what they could even begin to grasp. Because they just had their own idea about what this whole Jesus thing meant. About all the things he'd done. They couldn't get past it. But Jesus knew that moment of triumph was not the high point. That even as he came into Jerusalem, that was the starting point on a road that was going to lead to his execution. That by walking into Jerusalem, he was guaranteeing that he was going to end up on that cross. So this triumph, in a way, was for Jesus the beginning of the end. But at the other end of it, you have this passage that we heard. The last thing Jesus says on the cross. It is finished. He says, it is finished. And I picture, one of these onlookers sitting there watching and thinking, yeah, it's finished all right. You're done. But one of the things is that what Jesus says doesn't mean it's finished like I'm at the end of the line. It means this is the last piece. It's the same word when Jesus says, be perfect. It's the same word.